and welcome to Elle-C Bedtime Stories. We are up to episode 6 now. And of course, I'm doing this live right now. I just finished writing this story and I'm going to read it out loud to you guys. And we have everyone in chat there. You guys can say hello if you like, because this will be a part of the recording. With that said, let us begin. Candlelight by Elle-C. I heard the distinct metallic click as I raked away at the pins inside of the keyhole using a small pick and a wedge made specifically for applying pressure. It was a pretty basic chain lock, slightly rusted in places, but still perfectly functional. One that had been probably bought at the local hardware store, about 3 blocks from the cemetery. In fact, I'm pretty sure this is the very same lock from last year, and I had picked it with little difficulty the exact same way. It sounds a little sketchy, but this is actually my grandparents' final resting place. The problem is that they're locked away in a private mausoleum, and we didn't have the keys. The old caretaker was there, of course, and he did have the keys tucked away somewhere, but we always told him it was unnecessary to go and get them. Inside, we lit a few candles in front of the tombs. They were stacked up on top of each other, like mahjong tiles laid flat. My grandparents, according to my mother, were not exactly on the best of terms with each other, even though they had at least 7 children together between them. They began living separately in their old age. But here they are, together again, forever. Or at least as long as this mausoleum remains standing. I suppose you can say death resolves all grudges, even those beyond the grave. We had just finished locking up once again when something caught my attention. It was a swelteringly hot and extremely humid night. So my mother was in a rush to get to the air-conditioned car already. I told her to wait for me there. She had a bewildered look on her face, but she simply nodded in agreement and went on her way. I reached into my bag of candles. We still had 2 left to spare, so this much was fine. Holding the candle in one hand, I sparked the lighter in my other hand and held it to the wick until I was certain the tiny orange-yellow flame could sustain itself on its own. I held the small cup-shaped candle in a slightly tilted-down position, allowing the tiny flame to rise up a little and melt the side of the wax. Within a few seconds, droplets of candle wax splashed neatly, making a very tiny puddle on the pavement. I placed the candle on top of the puddle in a deliberate and very practiced way. I remembered how my grandmother had taught me how to do this as a child. Ironically enough, it was also during a visit to my grandfather's grave on November 2nd, many years ago. Of course, things such as the reality of death and mortality were the furthest things from my mind at that time. In fact, All Saints' Day and All Souls' Day were more closely associated with the festivities and treats being sold in the stalls on those particular days, as well as having some fun rolling the melted candle wax into a ball, or even using them a bit like clay and molding them into all kinds of shapes while they're still partially liquidy and malleable. Staring mindlessly into the flickering candlelight, my adult self drifted off into memories, dreams of less complicated times, when humanity wasn't connected by a network of invisible lines tied to an electric plastic brick for most of their waking lives. I thought about the impact that grandparents must have on their grandchildren's lives. Some of those memories may be happy, some may not be so. But each unique experience adds some layer of meaning to the person's existence. Nostalgic, bittersweet memories that we carry with us our whole lives. I will no longer be able to hear my grandparents' voices, see their faces, whether happy or stern, except within the deepest recesses of my childhood memories. This is the reality of adulthood. At some point, the people and things we care for, they will all start to disappear, one by one. In the end, we all die alone. And I suppose acceptance of this fate is part of maturity. Or at least, I like to think of it like that. These may all be just justifications, meaningless euphemisms. A gust of wind blew past, causing the flame to flicker and forcing me back to the present for a moment. The candlelight swayed back and forth, threatening to almost die out, but it never really did. And pretty soon, I am mesmerized back into the world of my memories. I remembered my cousin who died just over a year ago. She was the same age as me and was living life just as well as she could, although she was more of an extrovert and liked hanging out with different groups of friends as she grew up. I always felt that there was a special connection between us. We were once inseparable friends as kids, but going to different schools and spending years physically apart from each other had us going our separate ways. With that said, nothing really changed between us, even as the years went by. During the rare times we'd see each other, during annual family gatherings such as birthdays, Christmas, and other similar celebrations, there was a sort of tacit understanding between us that we were still just the very same friends that we had always been, even if we rarely ever talked. This is why her sudden decline and eventual death hit me so hard, especially when I learned that she had personally asked me to do her eulogy on her birthday, on her deathbed. Don't get me wrong, I've never really been a fan of delving that deeply into the metaphysical stuff, and I've been an atheist for the better part of my adult life. But at that moment, in that place surrounded by the tombs and graves of people who had passed on, some that I knew in life, and others who were total strangers, all mixed together in that public graveyard, I felt a sort of warmth. And no, it wasn't the humid heat that was starting to fry my brain. I felt warmth as in acceptance and security. And it made me think of certain questions that religion, all religions for that matter, and their proponents always felt sure that they had the answer to. What is consciousness? And where does our very personal consciousness, unique only to ourselves, go after we die? Inwardly, I smirked at the hundreds, no, maybe thousands of explanations that those who have chosen some form of indoctrination might have for my query, while being 100% sure of whatever words they might be parroting from their apparently infallible, historically accurate source. The wind starts to pick up again, And this time, the candlelight totally went out for a split second before stubbornly resurrecting itself. That's good. I guess this is enough, I remarked to myself. And before I knew it, the warmth that I had felt from this place began to permeate into the underside of my eyelids. I smiled. It's proof that someone cares for you. I'm sorry I couldn't do more. I took one last long look at the gravestone. It wasn't anyone that I knew. It had clearly been abandoned, and come this time next year, it wouldn't be here. The city would need to have it removed. Before I knew it, the warmth from my eyes had melted into liquid pools, streaming down my cheeks. The name had been eroded by time, yet the words below were still clearly visible. It read, born, 1989, died, December 11, 1993, age, 4 years. I stared at the lone candle and its persistently flickering flame that I had hurriedly placed on that unfamiliar gravestone on a whim. We had been to this place every year, but I'd never noticed it until now. There was no need for me, a complete stranger, to be sad about it. Again, it wasn't anyone I knew. It wasn't even anyone that had any kind of impact on my life. But all the same, I felt an aching pain in my chest while looking at it. And somehow, that pain felt right. I guess it's because tears and sadness are often overlooked or looked upon as negative things in society. We are often advised to strive to be happy and to avoid the things that might make us sad or depressed. And that is all well and good. But perhaps sadness, the right kind of sadness, isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes it's proof that we can love, that we have loved, and that we care, especially for those who have no one left to care for them. I walked away slowly, clutching the persistent flames of that candlelight close to my heart. The end. Alrighty, I hope you guys like that, and I will see you next time when I have the next of Elle-C bedtime stories prepared. And I do have some old stories I want to share with you guys, so watch out for it. If you enjoyed the stream, please consider my commission services, which are all negotiable and listed to my left. I am 100% reliant on YouTube nowadays, so any support is greatly appreciated. Once again, thanks for watching, and have a great rest of your day or night, wherever you may be watching me from. Bye-bye! Bye-bye!